The battlefield was burning, the sky torn in two by fire and smoke. Beneath the orange haze, Sergeant Elias Ward stumbled through the ruins of a once green valley, his armor cracked, his breath shallow. The sword in his hand glowed faintly blue, humming as if alive, and he could feel its pulse through the gauntlet. Around him lay the fallen, human and alien alike, their blood mixing into the blackened soil. He had never seen so much death, yet somehow, his heart still beat on. The blade's whisper echoed through his head like a fever dream, soft, insistent, impossible to silence. It felt almost like it wanted him to move faster, to reach someone before it was too late. He staggered toward the sound of a cry that pierced through the chaos. It came from the ridge where the alien commander had fallen. Elias remembered her face, cobalt blue skin, eyes like distant moons, the kind that saw too much. She was the last of her kind on this front, their leader, their beacon. When he found her, she lay crushed beneath debris, armor shattered, a faint light flickering through her chest plates. Her sword, the same eerie blue as his, was broken beside her. Elias knelt beside her body, unsure if she was breathing. Then her fingers twitched, and her eyes opened just enough to look at him. "Human," she rasped, each word catching on the edge of pain. "The sword will save you from any death, but its price," she coughed, blood streaking her lips, "is the life you cherish most." The wind howled over the ridge, carrying her words into the smoldering valley below. He had thought she was delirious. A dying enemy spouting superstition. But as he looked at the blade glowing in his grip, he felt something ancient stir beneath his skin. The pulse inside the sword grew stronger, syncing with his heartbeat. When he lifted it, arcs of blue light danced across the steel, crackling like lightning trapped in glass. It didn't feel forged, it felt born. For a moment, his reflection warped on its surface, and he thought he saw someone else staring back. Someone colder. Someone ready to trade everything. He shut his eyes and lowered the sword. The sound of the dying commander faded, replaced by the roaring flames consuming the battlefield. Hours later, the rescue teams arrived. Elias was the only one they found alive amid the wreckage. When they tried to pry the sword from his hand, it resisted, humming in warning. The medics said it was fused to his armor, that cutting it free would sever his nerves. So he kept it. In the months that followed, he returned home, not as a hero, but as a survivor no one could understand. The war between humans and the Illyri was over, though neither side could claim victory. Rumors spread that an ancient weapon had turned the tide, one that could bend death itself. Elias ignored them, until one night, he woke from a dream of blue fire and found the sword glowing beside his bed. It pulsed in rhythm with his wife's heartbeat as she slept beside him. He didn't tell her about the dream. He didn't tell anyone. But the more he ignored it, the more vivid the visions became. He would see the alien commander's eyes in reflections, hear her voice whispering through the hum of the blade. Sometimes he swore the sword moved when he wasn't touching it, turning toward the window, toward the stars. On the 12th night, unable to bear it, he carried it outside. The air was still, the city below asleep, and the stars burned cold above. He whispered into the wind, "What are you?" The blade shimmered, its glow deepening until it was almost white. Then, faintly, the alien's voice replied, "A promise kept by blood." Elias froze, the hair on his neck rising as the sword trembled. The next day, he sought help from a historian who specialized in alien relics, Dr. Myra Chen, an old friend from before the war. When he showed her the weapon, her expression shifted from fascination to dread. "That's not Illyri craft," she murmured, tracing the runes along its edge. "These markings predate both our civilizations. It's one of the star-forged relics." Elias frowned. "Relic or not, it saved me. But it won't leave me alone." Myra glanced up sharply. "It bonded with you." She hesitated, then added, "Elias, these relics, they demand equilibrium. Life for life. If it's keeping you alive, something else will pay the balance." His stomach turned cold. "You mean, someone I love?" Myra nodded. "Or already has." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. Every breath from his wife sounded like a countdown. Every heartbeat like a debt unpaid. He stood in the kitchen staring at the sword, now resting on the counter, still humming softly as if aware of his fear. "Take me instead," he whispered. The sword did not answer. When dawn came, he decided to leave. He couldn't risk staying, not if it meant losing her. He left a note she'd never understand and drove east, toward the ruins of the valley where it had all begun. The place was still scorched, barren, and silent except for the wind. He planted the sword in the blackened ground and knelt. "End it," he said. "End whatever curse you've bound to me." For the first time, the blade spoke, not with sound, but through his mind, a resonance like 1,000 voices overlapping. "You misunderstand," it said. "We do not take life. We restore balance." Blue fire enveloped him, lifting him from the ground. He felt memories flood his body, the alien commander's life, her choices, her guilt. The sword had not been hers, she had stolen it to save her people. She had paid the price, her twin sister's life, lost the moment the blade spared hers. And now it had chosen Elias, not as its victim, but as its vessel. When the fire subsided, he was kneeling on the same ground, but he was not alone. The alien commander stood before him, whole and breathing. Her eyes glowed with the same blue light as the sword. "You were not meant to bear it," she said softly. "But now it binds us both." Elias rose, shaking. "You died," he whispered. "I saw you die." She looked toward the burning horizon that no longer burned. Death bends to the blade's will. But it does not forget. He followed her gaze and saw shadows forming along the hills, figures half-formed, flickering like ghosts. "What are they?" he asked. "The lives owed," she replied. "The blade demands payment," Elias warned. "For every death it defies, it calls another to fulfill the circle." He gripped the hilt tighter, realizing that every life he'd saved, every breath he'd stolen from death's ledger, was building toward a reckoning. They fought together when the wraiths came. She moved like lightning, her motions fluid and otherworldly, while Elias fought with the desperate strength of a man who knew no victory could last. Every strike from the sword shattered the phantoms, but for each one he felled, another rose from the ashes. When at last the field was still, he dropped to his knees. "There's no end to it," he gasped. The alien woman knelt beside him, touching his shoulder. "There is," she said. "But it will cost the life you hold dear." He closed his eyes, thinking of his wife's laugh, her hand on his cheek, her voice saying his name. The sword pulsed once, as if listening. Then he whispered, "Take mine." The world shifted. Blue light consumed everything, fire, sky, flesh, thought. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in his home again. Morning sunlight spilled through the window. His wife stood there, alive, holding the sword. "Elias," she said softly, her eyes glistening. He moved toward her, but when he tried to touch her, his hand passed through. She dropped the sword in shock as it hit the floor with a sound like thunder. The blue flame within it flickered, and for a heartbeat, Elias saw the alien commander's face reflected in its surface, alongside his own. The sword's whisper came once more, balance restored. Then the light faded. 4 days, his wife searched for him, calling his name, refusing to believe he was gone. The authorities found no trace, only a scorched mark on the floor where the sword had fallen. Myra Chen came to retrieve it, but when she tried to lift it, it was cool and inert, like any ordinary blade. She stored it in a sealed chamber at the research facility, where it lay untouched for months. Until one night, the emergency lights flickered, and the hum returned, faint at first, then steady. Cameras caught the moment the sword's glow reignited, spreading blue light across the walls. A shadow moved in the reflection. A human shape, kneeling, holding the blade. Elias awoke in a place that wasn't life or death. It was vast and quiet, filled with the echoes of voices too old to name. The alien commander stood beside him, no longer flesh but light. "You saved her," she said. "The balance is whole." He turned the sword in his hand. It was no longer cold but warm, alive, pulsing softly. "What happens now?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Now, you guard the gate. Until someone else calls the blade." The stars above shimmered like embers dying out, and for the first time, Elias felt peace, not the peace of rest, but of purpose. He knelt, planted the sword before him, and closed his eyes. The hum became his heartbeat, steady and eternal, beneath an endless sky. On Earth, years passed. The war became legend. Children told stories of the sword that could defy death, of the man who vanished to save another. In time, even those stories faded, until another battlefield burned and another soldier fell. In his dying breath, he saw a faint blue glow through the smoke, and a voice whispering, "The sword that defies death demands the life you hold dear." He reached out, and the cycle began anew. Morning light spilled across a barren horizon of glass-black ash. The valley where Elias had once fallen was now a silent scar, scorched into permanence. The air shimmered faintly with the residue of something ancient, something that had refused to die. Within that stillness, the sword stood upright, buried halfway in the ground, humming softly. Myra Chen had returned, wearing her field armor and a visor that filtered radiation and spectral energy. She had come alone, though a dozen drones hovered behind her like metallic vultures. "Signal is stable," one of them reported. She exhaled. "Then he's really in there." The sword's glow pulsed, and for an instant she thought she saw a shadow kneeling beside it, the outline of a man reaching toward her through a veil of light. She approached slowly, kneeling in the suit. Her scanners flickered with impossible readings, overlapping brainwave patterns, one human, one alien, braided together. "Elias," she whispered. The sword responded with a faint vibration, its hum shifting tone as though it recognized her voice. She remembered his last visit, the haunted look in his eyes when he'd begged for understanding. He'd spoken of balance, of a debt that could not be paid in coin or blood. Now the relic hummed with quiet purpose, its blue fire tracing faint runes into the ground. She placed her palm near the hilt, not touching, merely feeling the air tremble, and the world changed around her. The valley vanished. She stood in a space made of light, stars folding like petals around her. In that luminous void, Elias appeared. His armor was unbroken, his eyes clear and calm, but there was distance in him, like a reflection that remembered it was no longer real. "Myra," he said, his voice carrying both relief and sorrow. "You shouldn't have come." She stepped closer, her words trembling. "You're alive." He shook his head. "Not as you mean it. The sword holds me here, between breaths, between deaths. I keep the balance now." Behind him, she saw figures forming out of blue light, the alien commander and countless others who had carried the blade before him. They stood in silence, guardians bound to a cycle older than empires. "Why show me this?" she asked. "Because," Elias said softly, "it's starting again." Outside, far beyond their vision, a new conflict was brewing. On the outer colonies, human settlers had begun mining the ruins of Ileri cities, unearthing relics they didn't understand. One in particular, a shard of identical alloy, had begun to pulse. It was calling to the sword. "If it awakens," Elias warned, "the balance breaks. The gate opens both ways." Myra's pulse quickened. "Then tell me how to stop it." The alien commander stepped forward, her voice echoing through the void like music. "The sword obeys the vow of its bearer. Only blood tied to his memory can wield it without corruption." Myra's eyes widened. "His wife." Elias nodded slowly. "She is the key, and the cost." When the vision faded, Myra found herself kneeling again on scorched earth. The drones hovered uncertainly, recording data her sensors could barely translate. She took the sword carefully, and to her astonishment, it allowed itself to be lifted. The blade was warm, thrumming with quiet recognition, as if aware of her intent. "I'll find her," Myra whispered. The hum answered like a heartbeat. 2 weeks later, she arrived in the quiet coastal town where Elias's wife, Claire Ward, lived in solitude. The house was the same one Elias had left behind, untouched, frozen in time. Claire opened the door before Myra could knock, her eyes red-rimmed but steady. "You found it," she said, voice low. "It's been calling me every night." Inside, the house felt haunted by memory. The sword rested on the table, its glow dim under sunlight. Claire sat opposite Myra, hands folded. "When he disappeared," she began, "I felt something break. But I also felt him watching. The night before you came, I dreamt of him standing on a shore of blue light, holding that sword." Myra listened quietly, studying the woman's calm resolve. "He's alive," she said finally, "but not as before. The sword has made him part of something larger, a gatekeeper between worlds. But now the balance is failing. There's another relic, a shard calling to it. If it awakens, it could tear both realms open." Claire's gaze dropped to the blade. "Then I'll do what he would have done." They left the next day for the frontier world of Navara 9, where the mining outpost scraped against the edge of alien ruins. The planet was grey and cold, its storms laced with metallic dust. The camp commander met them at the perimeter, pale and nervous. "We found it 3 kilometers below the surface," he said. The dig team never came back. Myra and Claire descended with an escort of drones, the sword sheathed across Claire's back. The tunnels were narrow, lined with carvings that pulsed faintly as they passed. Each step deeper felt like stepping into a heartbeat. When they reached the cavern, they saw it, a shard of the same blue metal, suspended above a crater, humming the same tune as the sword. The resonance was deafening. Claire drew the blade. The shard reacted instantly, sending waves of light across the walls. Myra shouted over the roar, "It's merging!" Claire gritted her teeth, raising the sword. "Then let it hear me." The blue fire leapt from the blade, connecting to the shard. For a moment, she saw Elias's face within the glow, his hand reaching toward hers. "Claire," he said, his voice trembling with warning. "If you bind them, the price, I know," she whispered. "I already paid it once." The connection exploded in light. Myra shielded her eyes as the entire cavern pulsed with energy, ancient machinery awakening around them. When the light faded, Claire was still standing, but the sword was gone. In its place lay a mark burned into the stone, a symbol of balance restored. On the surface, storms cleared for the first time in months. The miners spoke of seeing figures of light walking across the horizon, one human, one alien, moving as one before dissolving into starlight. Myra returned alone, the relics echo silent. She filed no official report, claiming the dig site had collapsed. But at night, she would hear faint whispers when the wind caught the edge of her window, Elias's voice, calm and distant. "Thank you." Years passed. Humanity rebuilt, slower, wiser. The legend of the sword that defied death became a quiet myth, a warning carved into academies and shrines. Balance demands love's courage. Far beyond Earth's borders, among drifting wrecks of forgotten wars, something stirred. A scavenger ship coasted through debris fields, its captain, a young man named Ryan, scanning for salvage. His sensors caught a faint energy spike, old but alive. He found it lodged within a derelict hull, a sword of blue light, humming softly under layers of ash. When he touched it, the hum matched his heartbeat. For a heartbeat he saw a man in ancient armor kneeling in fire, and a woman's voice whispering, "The sword that defies death, demands the life you hold dear." He hesitated, but the blade pulsed again, and his hand tightened. Somewhere across the void, the balance shifted once more. The wreck of the ship floated silent above a dead moon, its hull torn open like a wound that refused to close. Ryan sat in the cockpit, staring at the sword resting across his knees. Its glow filled the small cabin with shifting blue light, soft yet alive, casting spectral reflections across the walls. He hadn't slept since he found it. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw visions, burning fields, blue-skinned warriors, and a man in old armor standing in fire. The hum was constant, quiet enough to live with, loud enough to forget nothing. He didn't understand why it had chosen him, or what it wanted. All he knew was that the longer he held it, the more it felt like holding a heartbeat that wasn't his own. He'd tried to throw it out the airlock once. The sword refused. The moment it left his hands, it reappeared in its sheath beside him, humming louder, angrier. The ship sensors began to glitch after that, energy readings looping, navigation freezing on coordinates he didn't set. When he checked the nav data, the destination field displayed 2 words in an unknown language, but he could almost read them, "Return gate." He sighed, rubbing his face. "I'm talking to a sword," he muttered. "Great." The hum deepened in response, like a chuckle from something ancient. The stars ahead shimmered, bending slightly as if space itself leaned toward the blade. That was when the transmission came through, a faint signal, encoded in a frequency no human used anymore. "Unknown vessel," the voice crackled. "Identify yourself." Ryan froze. The tone wasn't human, melodic, layered, resonant. He flicked on the receiver. "Freighter 72 Delta, independent salvage." A pause. Then, "You carry what should not be carried." The signal cut off. A moment later, his sensors lit up, a massive ship decloaking from the darkness, sleek and blue, moving like a predator through water. The insignia on its hull was alien, yet familiar from his visions. The Eleri. He'd thought they were extinct. The larger ship locked a tractor beam on his vessel. He could have fought, but something inside him said not to. Instead, he let it pull him in, light filling his cabin until everything went white. When the brightness faded, he stood on a metal deck under alien stars. Figures surrounded him, their armor glimmering like liquid crystal. At their center stood a tall woman, cobalt skin, silver eyes, presence like cold flame. "You are human," she said, her voice carrying strange reverence. "And yet you hold the blade of the eternal gate." Rian gripped the hilt tighter. "Found it. Didn't ask for it." Her gaze softened. "No one ever does." She motioned to the others. "Lower your weapons. The cycle begins anew." They obeyed instantly. Rian's throat tightened. "Cycle? What are you talking about?" The alien commander, for that's what she seemed to be, stepped closer. "Every few generations, the sword chooses a bearer. Human or Eleri. Life or death. The balance demands renewal." They led him through corridors lined with ancient murals depicting battles, worlds rising and falling, and a single recurring figure, the sword. It appeared in every age, always the same, always shining. In one image, a man knelt beside a blue-skinned woman, their hands joined on the blade's hilt. The plaque below glowed faintly, "Ward and Ilara, keepers of the gate." Rian stopped. "Ward," he whispered. "Elias Ward." The commander turned sharply. "You know that name." "He was human," Rian said slowly. "A soldier from the old wars." The commander's expression flickered between awe and grief. He was the last to seal the gate. His sacrifice bound the realms together. She paused. "And his blood calls still." They reached the central chamber, a massive hall open to the stars, where an energy vortex shimmered like a slow storm. The commander gestured toward it. "The gate," she said. "It keeps the boundary between life and what lies beyond." Rian's eyes widened. "You mean, death," she finished. "Or what your kind calls it." He felt the sword's hum intensify, vibrating in his grip. The vortex pulsed in answer. "It's reacting," he said quietly. "Because it remembers," she murmured. "The gate senses the imbalance." She turned to him. "Did you lose someone, Rian?" He hesitated, eyes falling. "My sister. 6 months ago. A reactor collapse. I was supposed to be there." The sword flared brighter, and the gate's storm deepened. The commander stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "It knows your grief. That is why it chose you." He shook his head. "I don't want this. I just want her back." "Then you already walk the path," she said. "But understand the cost, it never changes." Her voice softened. "To return one life, another must be taken. The sword does not bargain. It balances." The words hit like cold iron. Rian's pulse pounded. There has to be another way. She looked toward the gate, sadness flickering across her eyes. There isn't. Even Ward learned that. He gave his life for the one he loved. The circle never stops. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the steady hum of the blade. Somewhere deep inside, Rian felt something shift, the first crack of temptation. That night, the Eleri ship drifted near the gate, its engine silent. Rian couldn't sleep. He sat in the observation bay, watching the storm of light twist and pulse beyond the glass. The commander approached quietly. "You still resist." "Wouldn't you?" he said. She tilted her head. "Once, yes. But I have seen what happens when mortals try to defy balance. Worlds unravel. Time folds. The blade consumes what it protects." He stared at the sword. "Then why keep it?" "Because without it, everything dies." Her gaze softened. "The universe needs a threshold, and someone to guard it." He looked at her, weary. "Then what am I?" She smiled faintly. "The next guardian. Unless you make another choice." Before he could answer, alarms blared. A ripple tore across the gate, not from within, but from beyond. The vortex twisted violently, pulling energy outward. The commander's calm vanished. Impossible, she whispered. Something's trying to come through. The ship shuddered as gravitational waves surged. Rianne grabbed the railing, the sword's glow intensifying until it hurt to look at. What's happening? A breach, she said. A soul refusing balance. Through the storm, shapes appeared, translucent forms clawing from the other side. Those are the unreturned, she said grimly. Those who defied the price. The ship's hull groaned as the entities slammed into the barrier, and for the first time, Rianne heard them whisper his name. They spoke in his sister's voice. Rianne, it said, trembling, pleading. Help me. His heart stopped. No, he whispered. That's not possible. The commander reached for him. It's a law. The gate knows your pain. But the voice grew stronger. You can save me, Rianne. The sword can bring me back. The glow in his hand pulsed with each word, responding to his will. He looked at the gate, the storm thinning, revealing glimpses of something beyond. A face. Familiar. Terrified. Lena, he breathed. The commander shouted something, but he barely heard. The sword surged with light, lifting him from the floor, pulling him toward the vortex. Rianne, stop, she cried. If you open it, the balance collapses. But he couldn't let go. The world dissolved into blinding blue. He found himself standing in a vast plain of light, the gate stretching endlessly above. And there, Lena, his sister, as he remembered her. She ran toward him, tears in her eyes. You came, she said. I waited so long. He reached for her hand, but the sword flared between them, its energy pulsing in warning. The alien commander's voice echoed faintly, distant but urgent. If you take her, something else must fall. Rianne looked into his sister's eyes, torn between love and fear. I can't lose you again. The light around them trembled. She smiled sadly. You already did. Then the sword acted, splitting the light in two, severing the illusion. The gate screamed as the fabric of balance strained to breaking. When Rianne awoke, he was on the floor of the chamber, the sword dim in his grasp. The commander knelt beside him, blood seeping from a wound across her shoulder. The ship's systems flickered, half the crew gone. You touched the gate, she whispered. And survived. He stared at the blade, its glow faint but alive. I saw her, he murmured. She was real. She was memory, the commander said. The sword gave you what you wanted to see, to test your will. She looked toward the vortex, now calm but scarred by fissures of light. You've changed it. The gate's rhythm is no longer steady. Rianne swallowed. Can it be fixed? She didn't answer. The silence that followed said everything. In the days that followed, the Illyri ship drifted in orbit, repairing what it could. Rianne spent hours staring into the sword's glow, hearing faint echoes, not voices, but sensations, like heartbeats across time. Sometimes he thought he felt Elias's presence again, whispering through the hum, you've set it in motion. Now finish it. He didn't know what that meant. Only that the commander had begun studying him differently, with the wary respect one gives a storm. You're becoming what he was, she said one night. The next keeper. He shook his head. I'm no guardian. I'm just trying to make it right. She smiled sadly. So was he. As the ship prepared to enter the gate's perimeter once more, Rianne stood at the viewport, the sword's light steady against the dark. He didn't know if he was ready, or if anyone ever could be. But he understood now why it had chosen him, not because he was brave, but because he still hoped, even after loss. The commander joined him silently, her armor glinting under the starlight. The gate responds to intention, she said. What will you ask of it this time? Rianne looked down at the blade, then at the storm beyond. Not for her return, he said quietly. For balance. For peace. The sword flared once, brighter than before, as if agreeing. Somewhere beyond the stars, the hum of eternity shifted its tune. The Illyri vessel drifted at the edge of the gate's vast shimmer, the storm of light spreading like the heartbeat of a living universe. Rianne stood on the observation deck, the sword's glow steady and patient in his grasp. It no longer felt hostile, only expectant. He had spent the last 6 days studying the ancient logs stored in the ship's archive, learning what Elias Ward had done generations ago. Ward hadn't destroyed the gate, he had sealed it from both sides, anchoring the cycle with his own life and that of the Ileri warrior Ilara. The records ended there, but the sword carried their echoes, each hum a memory of sacrifice. Rian knew that if he failed, the boundary between realms would collapse, and death would no longer be a passage, it would be a flood. The commander, whose name he'd learned was Sarai, entered quietly. Her arm was bound in crystalline armor that pulsed faintly as it healed. "We've stabilized the outer field," she said, "but the core still fluctuates. Whatever you did, it altered the gate's frequency." He looked at her, exhausted. "It's because of me." "Because of the sword," she corrected gently. "You merely awakened what was waiting." She stepped beside him, watching the light ripple across the void. Ward said the same words before he vanished. He believed choice could undo cost. Rian clenched his fists. He wasn't wrong. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "Then prove it." Outside, the storm pulsed again, as though answering the challenge. They gathered the council of ship elders, old Ileri whose bodies shimmered with veins of bioluminescent light. The chamber was silent but for the hum of energy from the gate. "The imbalance grows," one elder said. "The border weakens with each passing hour." Another added, "If it breaks, the veil between life and void collapses. Every soul will drift untethered." Sarai turned to them calmly. "There is a path. The human bears the relic's mark. The sword listens to him." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Rian felt the weight of their eyes, heavy with both suspicion and hope. "I didn't ask for this," he said, voice quiet but steady. "But I won't let everything die because of me. Tell me what needs to be done." The eldest of them regarded him with solemn eyes. "The gate must be harmonized anew. But the ritual requires two, one living, one chosen by the blade." Later, in the quiet of the armory, Rian stood before the mirror-like walls, the sword resting across his palms. "One living, one chosen," he murmured. "Meaning what?" The reflection shifted, and for an instant, he saw Elias Ward standing beside him, not as a ghost, but as memory. "Meaning both," the echo said. Rian's breath caught. "You're still here." "Parts of me," Elias replied. "The sword keeps what it needs." "Then help me," Rian said urgently. "How did you do it?" Elias smiled faintly, the weariness of centuries in his eyes. "You can't destroy the balance, only reshape it. You have to offer it what it wants most, the will to love and lose." His image began to fade. "Remember that when it asks." Then he was gone, leaving only the hum of the sword as answer. When Rian told Sarai what he'd seen, she did not doubt him. "Ward's echo is bound to the relic. The gate carries fragments of all who bore it. If it spoke to you, it's preparing you." She looked out at the stars, her voice low. "We begin the ritual at dawn. Once it starts, it cannot be undone." He nodded, though his stomach turned cold. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stood again in the observation bay, watching the gate swirl like a galaxy caught in glass. His thoughts drifted to Lena, her laughter, her warmth, the promise he never kept. "You'd tell me to stop being stupid," he whispered. The sword's pulse quickened, faintly amused, almost tender. "You'd hate what I'm about to do." Outside, the storm brightened, and he knew it could hear him. Dawn on the ship was a slow rise of bioluminescence, the corridors glowing like veins under translucent skin. The ritual platform was built at the vessel's core, where gravity and light folded inward. Sarai waited there, her armor gleaming with runic etchings that pulsed in time with the gate's energy. "Once we begin," she said, "the sword will test you. It will reach into what you cherish most. If you falter, the cycle repeats." He stepped beside her, gripping the hilt. "And if I don't?" "Then the gate resets, and balance returns." She placed her hand over his, their fingers tightening on the same blade. "No fear, human. The sword knows truth better than courage." Together, they raised it toward the light. The storm erupted. Blue fire enveloped them, lifting them from the platform. The hum became a chorus, thousands of voices speaking in unison, layered across time. Rian could see flashes of every bearer before him, Elias and Ilara sealing the gate, Myra touching the relic, Claire weeping in her home. Each fragment folded into him, like pages written in the same hand. "What do you seek?" the voices asked. He shouted into the light, "Balance." The glow pulsed harder. "And what will you give?" His throat tightened. "Anything." The chorus deepened, resonant and vast. "Then surrender what you love most." Images of Lena flooded his mind, but he pushed through. "No," he said. "Not her. Take what binds me to grief." The storm paused, uncertain. "You would give your love?" "No," he whispered. "I'd give my pain." For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then the light shifted, changing from violent blue to soft white. Sarai's eyes widened. She could feel the difference too. "You're altering the vow," she said, disbelief in her voice. "It's never been done." Rianne's grip tightened. "Ward said it needed will, not sorrow. The gate feeds on loss because that's all we offer it. But what if we offer hope instead?" The storm began to calm, the fissures closing, the energy stabilizing. The elders monitoring from above stared in awe as readings normalized for the first time in centuries. But balance was not restored easily. The sword trembled violently, resisting, craving the old exchange. It demanded blood, demanded memory, demanded the old law. Rianne screamed as light tore through his chest. Sarai caught him before he fell. "Hold on," she shouted over the roar. "It's fighting you." He gritted his teeth, forcing the sword upright. "Then it'll learn." Energy cascaded from the blade, threads of light weaving through the air like living things. They coiled around him and Sarai both, binding them together. "The gate is linking us," she gasped. "It's merging its halves." Pain surged through Rianne's body, but beneath it was something deeper, understanding. He felt her memories mixing with his, her centuries of loss, her people's extinction, her loneliness in command. And in turn, she felt his, a childhood on earth, a promise broken, a sister's laughter cut short. For the first time, two worlds shared the same heartbeat. Then came the test. The light solidified, forming two figures before them, Lena and Ilara, the first keepers. Both were made of blue flame, their faces calm yet mournful. To end the cycle, one must remain, the voices intoned. One must carry both realms within. Rianne looked at Sarai, realization dawning. "It's you or me." She nodded slowly. "It must be you." The sword chose human will this time. He shook his head. "You're the anchor. It needs both sides." The gate trembled, unstable again. "Rianne," she said softly, "if you fail, all life dies. If I stay, something survives." The words broke him, but he saw the truth in her eyes, quiet, steady, resolute. "There has to be another way." She smiled faintly. "You already found it. Hope." Then she pushed his hand forward, pressing the sword into his chest. Light exploded outward. The gate roared like a collapsing sun. Rianne felt Sarai's presence fuse with his own, not dying, but becoming, a synthesis of human and Ileri, mortal and eternal. He saw her memories burn into his, saw Elias and Ilara watching from beyond, their faces proud. The sword's hum steadied, resonant and whole. For the first time in history, the gate's light turned gold, balance rewritten. The storm quieted. The ship ceased trembling. And Rianne Ward, for that was the name etched into the sword now, stood alone on the platform, the relic glowing softly in his hands. He could feel Sarai still there, not gone but within, a voice that would never fade. When the elders entered, they fell to one knee. "It is done," one whispered. "The gate rests." Rianne lowered the blade, exhausted. "No," he said softly. "It lives." The hum of the sword echoed through the chamber, calm and steady, no longer a warning but a song. Outside, the gate's surface reflected a new pattern, twin spirals intertwined, one human, one Ileri. The universe exhaled. The cycle was broken. Or perhaps, finally understood. The silence after the gate storm was not absence but completion, a deep quiet filled with faint music no ear could catch. Rianne stood at the center of the chamber, his breath steady but his mind a horizon of noise. The sword floated before him, suspended in air, its glow no longer blue but a warm, living gold. It pulsed once with his heartbeat and once with another that was not his own. Sarai's voice lived there now, soft but constant, a whisper of wind through an endless field. "You did it," she said. "The gate listens." He smiled faintly, though exhaustion dragged at his bones. "We did it," he corrected. The hum deepened in approval, and the chamber lights dimmed as if bowing to a new rhythm the universe had never known before. Beyond the observation bay, the gate had changed form entirely. It no longer swirled like a wound or storm. It looked like a vast mirror, reflecting the stars without distortion. To the elders who had survived, it was a miracle. To Rian, it was a promise, that death and life no longer stood opposed but intertwined. Yet peace was not simple. The Ileri ship carried scars that would never heal, and the surviving crew looked to him with reverence mixed with unease. He was no longer just human. His eyes glowed faintly under shadow, his veins shimmering gold when he gripped the blade. Sarai's essence flowed through him, making his voice carry echoes that weren't entirely his. "They're afraid," he murmured one night. "Of change," she answered within him. "Mortals always are. Even gods once feared their own making." He began to understand the sword's true nature through fragments of memory not his own. The relic wasn't a weapon but a seed, a construct grown from dying stars and the thoughts of those who first learned to walk between worlds. It had been forged not to kill, but to teach. Each bearer was a lesson, each cycle an equation rewritten. Elias had taught it devotion. Ilara had taught it unity. Claire had given it endurance. And now, through him and Sarai both, it learned compassion. Yet such knowledge carried a cost. The blade whispered constantly, showing him glimpses of souls passing through the gate, lives reborn, memories scattered, destinies rerouted. It was too much to hold. One night, as he lay in the dim light of the ship's core, he whispered, "How long before it forgets us?" Sarai answered softly, "Never. It remembers everything we are, even what we wished we were." Weeks turned into months as they rebuilt. The Ileri home system, long thought lost, began to pulse faintly with signs of renewal, dormant seeds under alien soil blooming for the first time in centuries. The energy that once leaked from the gate now nourished creation itself, restoring what war had undone. Humanity, too, began to feel the shift. Across distant colonies, reports spread of dreams shared by strangers, visions of golden light, of two figures standing hand in hand at the edge of eternity. The legends returned, no longer warnings but hymns. The sword that defies death was no longer cursed, it was the bridge between heartbeats. Still, Rian kept to the stars, unwilling to let peace blind him. "Balance," he told the elders once, "isn't stillness. It's motion that never falls." But even motion has gravity. One night, as the ship drifted beyond mapped sectors, a ripple crossed the gate. Rian felt it instantly, a fracture forming somewhere deep within the flow. "Another imbalance," he whispered. Sarai stirred inside him. A new soul reaching backward. He gripped the hilt. "Meaning someone is calling the sword." "Meaning," she corrected gently, "someone is dying who refuses to die." They turned the ship toward the disturbance, the engines igniting like dawn. The journey took days, though time near the gate was strange, it stretched and folded like breath in winter. When they arrived, the sight broke him. A human freighter lay shattered among asteroid fragments, its distress beacon still pulsing. Within the debris field drifted a single pod, glowing faintly gold. Inside was a child. He brought her aboard himself. She couldn't have been older than 12, pale, unconscious, her small hand still clutching a fragment of glass. The sword hummed low when it sensed her, as though recognizing kin. "She's alive," he murmured. "Barely," Sarai said. "But the light in her, it's ours." He didn't understand until he looked closer. Embedded beneath her skin, near her heart, was a splinter of golden crystal, a fragment of the gate itself. Somehow, she had absorbed part of its essence. "How?" he asked. Sarai was silent a long moment before answering. "Because the gate listens now. It answers hope as easily as grief." She must have called out with love strong enough to cross death's veil. He stared at the child, heart aching. "So the cycle begins again." "Not the same," Sarai whispered. "This one was born of choice, not debt." When the girl awoke, she stared at him with eyes that glowed faintly like the gate's reflection. "You were there," she said softly. "In the light." He knelt beside her. "You remember." She nodded. A voice told me to keep walking until I saw gold. Then you found me. He smiled gently. That voice, it wasn't me. It sounded like both of you, she said, eyes unfocused, as if listening to something beyond hearing. Sarai's presence within him warmed. The gate spoke through her. It chose her. Rian exhaled. Then she's the next one, Sarai finished. But different. The first not born of sorrow. They named her Orin. She learned fast, asking questions that reached beyond comprehension, her laughter breaking the ship's cold halls like sunrise. For the first time, Rian felt what it meant to guard hope rather than survive it. As years passed, Orin grew into her power. The sword answered her touch as easily as his. When she held it, the hum softened to a lullaby. She could hear the souls passing through the gate, guiding them gently rather than forcing them to cross. The elders began calling her the golden heir, the child of the balance reborn. Rian watched her train each morning, her movements precise yet filled with joy. You're better than I ever was, he said once, smiling. She grinned. You had to fight to believe. I was born already believing. Sarai laughed softly in his mind. She is what we hoped the future would be. Still, even light must face shadow. The gate's mirror sometimes flickered, showing flashes of worlds where death had no gatekeeper, universes where the cycle never began. Reflections, Sarai warned. Possibilities that envy existence. When Orin turned 16, the reflections became fractures. Echoes of other realities bled through, storm-grey phantoms twisting at the gate's edge. They're not alive, she whispered one night, staring at the mirror. They are hungry. Rian stood beside her, gripping the sword. They want the same thing all broken things want, a way in. The phantoms pressed closer, whispering across glass-like light. Among them, Rian saw faces, Elias, Ilara, even Sarai's before she fused with him, each one distorted, pleading. We could pull them through, Orin said. Save them. No, he said sharply. That's how it starts again. Her eyes filled with tears. Then why show them to me? To remind us the line still matters. The gate trembled as if agreeing. Beyond it, the phantoms faded like smoke. But one did not fade. It lingered, a small shape of light, fragile and pure. A child. Orin reached out instinctively. The mirror rippled, her fingers brushing the surface. Before Rian could stop her, the gate surged, pulling her hand through. Orin! He grabbed her wrist, the sword leaping from its sheath, embedding itself into the floor to anchor them. Golden energy tore through the chamber, shaking the vessel to its core. Let go, she shouted. I can't, he yelled back. The child of light on the other side whispered faintly, help me. Sarai's voice erupted in his mind. She's repeating your choice. Then we stop her. Not by force, Sarai said. By faith. He looked into Orin's terrified eyes and whispered, trust it. Trust what you are. She hesitated, then released his hand. The gate calmed instantly. The child of light stepped forward, touched her brow, and vanished. When the glow faded, Orin stood alone, unharmed. What happened? She whispered. The sword rose from the floor, its glow renewed. Balance, Sarai said softly. She gave mercy, not rescue. Rian felt tears sting his eyes. You did what none of us could, he told Orin. You loved without trying to own. The gate shimmered once more, sealing itself perfectly, the reflections quiet forever. In that moment, Rian knew the cycle had truly ended, not by sacrifice or sorrow, but by understanding. Orin smiled faintly. It's beautiful now. So are you, he said, voice breaking. You're what comes after us. Years passed like breath. The gate became a monument of peace between worlds. The Ileri rebuilt their homeworld, and humanity sent envoys of learning rather than war. Legend spoke of a man with gold-lit eyes and a girl who carried starlight in her hands, guardians who walked between life and death not as rulers but as keepers of harmony. In time, Rian's body began to fade, not decaying, but becoming light, the same golden hue as the sword. Orin held his hand as he smiled. You'll hear me in the hum, he said softly. Every time it sings. I don't want it to stop, she whispered. It won't, Sarai's voice said gently, now one with both of them. Balance doesn't end. It changes form. Rian placed the sword in Orin's hands, the blade gleaming with quiet fire. Then carry it well, he said. Carry us all. When he was gone, Orin stood at the edge of the gate, her reflection endless in its golden mirror. She raised the sword once, saluted the stars, and whispered the vow taught by generations before her. The sword that defies death asks not for life, but for love strong enough to balance it. The gate pulsed once, answering with the echo of countless voices joined as one. The cycle was finally whole.